Canada is changing, and fast. From jobs to housing, from politics to culture, many Canadians feel like their country is transforming into something unrecognizable. Some even ask, is Canada becoming India 2.0? And why is no one willing to talk about it openly? Stay with me, because what we uncover today might shock you. Chapter 1. Immigration Numbers and Rapid Growth. Canada's immigration levels have surged to record highs, with annual permanent resident admissions surpassing 30,000 by 2023 and projections for 2025 remaining near that number. Among these, Indian nationals consistently make up the largest group of newcomers, surpassing 118,000 in 2022 alone. This dominance has created both admiration and unease as Canadian communities transform rapidly. Beyond permanent residence, temporary programs have expanded massively. Work permits, international student visas, and temporary foreign worker streams have brought in millions more. By 2024, nearly 40% of all international students in Canada came from India, creating an unmistakable demographic shift on college and university campuses. Cities like Brampton, Surrey, and Mississauga showcase the transformation most clearly. In Brampton, for example, over 60% of the population identifies as South Asian, and Punjabi is now the second most spoken language after English. Some celebrate this diversity, while others feel that integration is not keeping pace. Advocates highlight the benefits. Immigration fuels GDP, offsets an aging population, and strengthens labor markets. Yet critics counter that the pace and concentration of immigration overwhelm housing, jobs, and healthcare systems, producing social friction. Healthcare illustrates this dilemma. With more patients arriving, Canada has increasingly relied on foreign-trained doctors and nurses, many from India. They fill urgent gaps, yet locals worry whether the system can sustain the surge. Public opinion has shifted sharply. Polls in 2024 found that 65% of Canadians believed immigration levels were too high, up from 35% in 2018. The speed of change rather than diversity itself seems to be the sticking point. Demographically, Canada's fertility rate fell to 1.33 in 2025, one of the lowest in the developed world. Immigration, again dominated by Indian nationals, has been the sole driver of population growth, pushing the national population past 41 million. Critics question the lack of diversity within diversity. With India dominating so many streams, has Canada unintentionally tied its future too closely to one country? International education has become an industry in itself. By 2023, Indian nationals made up nearly 45% of all new study permits, with entire colleges relying heavily on them for survival. This concentration raises questions about sustainability and fairness. By 2025, estimates suggested over 1 million Indian nationals were residing in Canada, whether as permanent residents, students, or temporary workers. This critical mass has undeniable influence on Canada's economy and society. Supporters highlight positive contributions. Indian immigrants bring family networks, entrepreneurial drive, and academic ambition. Detractors warn that cultural enclaves and limited integration risk creating parallel societies. For Canadians, the debate has shifted. The question is no longer whether immigration is beneficial, but whether the balance has tipped too far, too fast. Chapter 2. Jobs Canadians can't get. Employment markets have shifted, with immigrants, particularly Indian nationals, dominating trucking, IT, healthcare support, and retail. In Ontario, nearly 40% of truck drivers are foreign-born, many from India, symbolizing both economic need and displacement. The tech industry shows similar patterns. Indian workers have become heavily represented in software and IT companies. Canadian graduates complain of being overlooked despite relevant training, sparking accusations of bias and wage undercutting. Employers defend these practices by claiming there are labor shortages. Critics argue these shortages are exaggerated and that corporations simply prefer cheaper, more compliant labor. Wage suppression is evident. With immigrants willing to accept lower pay, Canadian wages have stagnated. This benefits corporations but leaves locals squeezed in their own economy. Healthcare illustrates this divide. Indian-born nurses and support workers keep facilities running, yet Canadian workers complain that wages remain frozen because employers can always hire newcomers at existing rates. Young Canadians face a grim reality. Entry-level roles are saturated, leaving graduates saddled with debt and unable to find work in their own country. Frustration is widespread, especially among those with advanced degrees. Youth unemployment remains stubbornly high at 14% in 2024-25, more than double the national average. For many young Canadians, the future looks uncertain as jobs are siphoned away. The temporary foreign worker program has drawn heavy criticism. Reports of wage theft, unsafe conditions, and exploitation highlight systemic abuse. Instead of raising standards for locals, Canada leans on cheap temporary labor. By 2025, over 2.5 million temporary residents were in Canada, a record high, competing directly with citizens for jobs in critical industries. This fuels resentment and a sense of being replaced. Agriculture is one stark example. Once staffed by Canadians, it now relies almost entirely on foreign workers. While this stabilizes food supply, locals see it as proof that wages are artificially suppressed. Tech outsourcing exacerbates the divide. Many roles that could employ Canadian graduates are filled by temporary work permit holders. Employers cut costs, but Canadians feel shut out of their own industries. Unless reforms are made to protect wages, strengthen hiring practices, and prioritize locals, the divide between immigrants and Canadians in the workforce will deepen, breeding mistrust and long-term instability. Chapter 3: Housing and AMP Cost of Living Crisis. Housing is the clearest flashpoint. In 2024, Canada welcomed almost 500,000 new permanent residents, but built fewer than 250,000 new housing units. Demand continues to outstrip supply. Indian immigrants often pool resources across extended families, allowing them to outbid Canadians who rely solely on individual incomes. This practice reshapes housing markets in cities like Brampton and Surrey. Home ownership is slipping out of reach. By 2025, the average home price in Toronto surpassed $1.1 million, while wages rose only slightly. The gap between earnings and ownership grows wider every year. Renters suffer too. Vacancy rates in Toronto and Vancouver remain below 2%, with international students, most from India, driving demand for rentals. Canadian students report being forced into cars, shelters, or shared overcrowded housing as rents soar. Their frustration boils over in protests and online campaigns. Communities have transformed visibly. Neighborhoods shift culturally, with entire districts reflecting immigrant-majority populations, while Canadian-born residents move out or feel alienated. Infrastructure buckles under the strain. Transit, healthcare and schools cannot keep up with the population surge. Wait times increase, service quality declines, and resentment builds. Immigrant success stories fuel division. When immigrant families purchase homes and celebrate, Canadians struggling to rent see a painful contrast. Federal promises to build more homes fall short. Even ambitious targets are dwarfed by the sheer demand created by immigration. Economists warn that Canada now faces one of the worst housing affordability crises in the developed world. Without drastic measures, a generation of Canadians risks permanent exclusion from home ownership. This creates a two-tier reality. Immigrants who can pool wealth secure homes, while locals feel priced out. The symbolism of losing access to shelter in one's own country intensifies anger. Unless both immigration levels and housing supply are addressed in tandem, Canada's housing market will remain the most visible driver of division and discontent. Chapter 4. Cultural and political shifts. Immigration has reshaped not just the economy, but Canada's identity. Indian culture is increasingly visible in public life, from festivals to businesses to politics. Celebrations like Diwali are now mainstream in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, drawing tens of thousands. While many celebrate this multiculturalism, others see it as replacing Canadian traditions. Language shifts underline this change. Punjabi is now among the top spoken languages nationwide, particularly in Ontario and BC. While this highlights diversity, it also raises fears of English and French erosion. Politics reflects the demographic shift. In Brampton and Surrey, Indian origin candidates dominate municipal and provincial seats. Supporters hail this as representation, while critics warn of block voting and vote banking. At the federal level, Indian origin politicians are increasingly prominent in shaping immigration, housing, and trade policies. This influence sparks questions about whether policy reflects all Canadians equally. Education is a battleground. Schools are adapting to cultural diversity, but parents complain of curriculum shifts and accommodation debates that strain integration. Religious influence is growing too. Sikh and Hindu institutions play larger roles in public life, raising debates about secularism and multiculturalism. Media landscapes are fragmenting. Entire networks now cater to Indian-Canadian audiences, creating narratives that sometimes diverge from mainstream Canadian news. The concept of Canadian identity is under pressure. For some, Canada is becoming a global hub of cultures. For others, it's losing its cohesion and uniqueness. Even small towns are experiencing rapid demographic change, forcing residents to rethink community norms and traditions. The multicultural experiment that defined Canada for decades is facing its toughest test. Can a society function without a strong, unifying identity? Without greater integration efforts, Canada risks splintering into parallel societies rather than building shared national values. Chapter 5. What lies ahead for Canada? If current patterns continue, Canada could face lasting division. Immigrants thrive in jobs, housing, and politics, while Canadians feel increasingly marginalized. The phrase India 2.0 reflects a growing fear that Canada is losing its sovereignty over its future. For some, it's a proud evolution. For others, it's an existential crisis. Economically, Canada risks a generation excluded from jobs and homes, creating deep inequality. Growth on paper masks discontent in reality. Social cohesion is weakening. Cultural enclaves are strengthening faster than integration efforts, leaving Canadians and immigrants divided. Politically, populism could rise. Parties promising to curb immigration and prioritize locals may gain unprecedented support. Young Canadians locked out of jobs and homes are already showing signs of activism. Their frustration may reshape politics in the coming years. Immigrants too face struggles, credential barriers, underemployment and cultural tension. This dual frustration risks escalating into conflict. Economists warn of stagnation. High population growth without wage growth or housing stability could stall prosperity. Policymakers must decide: continue mass immigration for growth or pause to restore balance. Either choice carries heavy consequences. Canada's global image is at stake. If locals continue feeling like outsiders, resentment could tarnish the country's reputation as a fair, welcoming society. Immigration will always be central to Canada's story. But the question is whether it unites or divides. The stakes have never been higher. For many Canadians, the future boils down to one haunting question: will Canada preserve its identity or transform into India 2.0 before their eyes? If this breakdown opened your eyes, don't stay silent. Hit the like button, share this video so more Canadians wake up to what's really happening, and subscribe for more hard truths. And tell me in the comments, do you think Canada is becoming India 2.0? Let's get the conversation going.